If you had to have one motivational quote, we also put this on the meme as well. What is your motivational quote that's unique to you? Basically, trying to a Caldwellism, if you will. What would you say is your motivational quote?
Yeah. So success is within the grasp of every young person that is bold enough to reach for it. And
Awesome.
that's something that I wholeheartedly believe, regardless of circumstance, situation. I believe that success, the realization of success, the maximization of their gifts, their talents, and their abilities for the accomplishment of their goals is in the grasp, within reach of every young person that's bold enough to take that step and believe in, again, who God created them to be, and being confident and comfortable enough to walk out their purpose.
Welcome to the Imagine Exposure Vodcast. We have an incredible guest with us today. As always, we try to highlight dynamic and diverse vocations going all the way from A to Z. And today we have a gentleman who his goal, his mission is everything from motivational speaking to giving students a better view of what is success, what is leadership. And he's going to break that down, so I'm not going to butcher it. But I'm welcoming none other than Darnell Caldwell. How you doing, Darnell? Welcome to the platform.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Our first question out the gate, we always ask every guest, is who are you and how do you define yourself?
All right. So again, my name is Darnell Caldwell, and I am a youth empowerment speaker as well as an author.
Absolutely. Okay. Um, what would you say is your story? What's your story as it pertains to vocation?
Okay. So story is kind of a roller coaster, so to speak. Really started off, I think, very, very typical. Graduated high school, and kind of the understanding was you graduate high school and you go to college and you try to secure a decent paying job. And um, when I first finished high school, again, that was my understanding. I need to finish high school, get a college degree, get a good paying job. And I had no idea what that looked like. At the time, my interests were really sports. Um, so I went to college and I just kind of grabbed at the air, so to speak, and picked a major. I said that I wanted to be an engineer, and that's what I did at my orientation and my meeting with my college advisor. But shortly into my college career, I realized that being an engineer is not what I wanted to do or what would be suitable for me. Um, Figured out that mathematics was a big requirement, and not really opposed to mathematics, but definitely not a math whiz by to any degree. And figured out real quick that that wasn't what I wanted to do, or again, not what would be suitable for me. So wrestled for a while, just kind of thinking through, okay, what am I interested in? What would I be good at? And I landed in the field of business. Became a business major. Um, Shortly before I graduated, shortly before I finished college, um, decided that I wanted to explore education. So I actually enrolled in an alternative certification program. And just for here in Texas, in order to teach in the school system, you actually have to have a bachelor's degree in education, or if you don't, you can go an alternative route and get what's called the alternative certification. And that's the route that I opted to do. But finished college, and before I could get enrolled in the program, well, I had already started applying for some jobs in business and was able to secure a position in finance. And for me, it was either take this job that would allow me to make a decent wage, or I could go into this alternative certification teaching program and um, maybe get a job, maybe not get a job. I chose finance, and I did that for a little bit, and really found myself unfulfilled. I would be at work and just spend the majority of my time outside of the time that I'm actually working. spent a lot of time thinking, okay, what am I really supposed to be doing? Because again, I was unfulfilled at my job and really unclear about what my future would hold. Um, Around that same time, I met met and entered in a relationship with Jesus, and wrestling with that kind of my calling, my ministerial calling, my faith calling, in addition to my occupational calling. So that was those two. I didn't understand at the time like how I could put those two together. Um, I I had this box of occupation and I had this box of ministry, and I knew I needed to be doing both, but I didn't understand how I could potentially mesh those two things. So I spent a little time in finance, and from there I went to work um, in retail. Actually landed at Enterprise in the management training program, and I was there for a little bit. And again, I found myself, okay, this is a job. It's paying the bills to some degree, but this is not my space. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Shortly after that, I got married. Um, and from there moved more so into education and nonprofit. And while I liked some aspects of education, um, mainly being I like being able to engage young people, particularly those from the urban context, from challenging backgrounds, and really helping to kind of those young people that I identify with, because that's my story, that's my background. Low income neighborhood, low performing school. So I wanted to be able to enter into those spaces and help those kids understand that in spite of where you come from, in spite of your background, like um, you can be greater than your situation, so to speak. So I did education, but again, I love the part of being able to empower kids to engage kids. But for me, the bureaucracy and standardized testing, I knew that, you know what, while I like this part, the majority of the other parts of education, I'm not necessarily feeling. So from there, moved to nonprofit, and the whole time I'm trying to figure out, okay, again, how do I mesh this faith calling with occupation, and started working in nonprofit, doing ministry full time. And in that space, I felt that I was closer to doing what I was supposed to be doing. Um, but though I was close, didn't feel like I was quite there yet. And in ministry, as a minister, someone that teaches, was able to teach the Bible and preach the Bible. Um, I was While I was walking out my calling, living out my calling, I also realized that along the way that this that speaking is a thing that I do that comes naturally. This is definitely my gifting. And just thinking back to early high school, I remember I had a ninth grade teacher. Found myself in a public speaking class, and at the time, public speaking was not something that was anywhere on my radar. In fact, it was probably one of my greatest fears. And I found myself in this class, and having to stand in front of my class and speak. And I remember thinking, okay, when I stand up and it's my turn to present, like I am literally gonna die. Like there's no way I can stand in front of these people and talk. Like small groups, friend group conversation, like no problem. But standing in front of somebody and speaking is not what I planned on doing. Long story short, in that class, I stood up in front of my class and I spoke. And because I was so frightened, I like just checked out. I don't recall what I talked about, what happened in that room, but I remember after I spoke, my teacher said, "One day you're going to be a public speaker." And I thought, lady, like you have to be like loony, out of your mind, crazy, just like that just doesn't even make sense, because that's not what I do. That's not what I want to do. Not what I'm interested in. And quite frankly, like I'm afraid of it. And while that meant nothing to me at the time, because I had never heard of a public speaker, motivational speaker. Like, I didn't know that was a career. But as I progressed and got older, I'm backtracking a little bit, but in college, I had the chance to, as a business major, I was, had to give presentations in class. And I just remember, and not really taking it with a grain of salt at the time, but in hindsight, along the way, there was teachers and professors like telling me, like, this is something that you do well, and didn't think much of it, because I didn't even know that it was a career. I had was never exposed to anyone that was a quote unquote speaker, in any degree outside of maybe the pastor at church. I knew that, like he speaks on a regular basis, but outside of that, I didn't know that public speaking was a thing. And again, found myself in his ministry role, and like I'm to some degree, I'm doing what I feel like I'm called to do, what I'm supposed to be doing, but at the same time, I'm not quite there yet. And during my last year, at my job, my nonprofit job, um, I decided, after prayer and really thinking through, okay, what does this look like? What does me walking in and living out my purpose look like? And started thinking through that, and I landed on this idea of being a speaker, and speaking to students in the K through 12 education industry.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I thank you for your story. Thank you for sharing. I think you're probably one of the first people have seen kind of make that move. For me, my personal transition. I was a teacher doing some teaching, and it was a situation as regards to grading that ended up leading me into doing this with the motivational speaker side. Is a big part of what I do, but I am thankful for your model and others as well. But it's a very important to hear the whole story, and to like, it's even important, I think, for young people to say, hey, just even your engagement of the fact that you didn't think you would be a speaker. Other people are like, no, this is what you are, and parting that into your life, and then from there transitioning to what you do right now. And I know your hashtag is like, not hashtag, your at Darnell Speaks, correct?
Yes, that's right. Darnell Speaks. Yes.
For sure. What would you say is the biggest misconception of your job?
I think the biggest misconception is that, and I'll say as of speakers, is that speakers are all extroverts. They're these loud,
Mm,
rambunctious, extremely talkative, um, center of the party type people, and that's not the case at all. Personally, I am, in most situations, I'm an introvert. um, I am in some context, depending on the setting, like I have um, maybe extrovertive tendencies, but as a whole, as for the most part, I'm definitely an introvert. So I think that's a big misconception, is that speakers are extroverts.
who would you say are the people in your vocational story in which you're most grateful? Who are the people you're most grateful
Um, so I would say, so I'll start off, like, while I don't know these people personally, they definitely help shape my kind of my journey as a speaker. And those people are, so most people are familiar with Eric Thomas, the motivational speaker. Well, of course, he has tons of motivational videos on YouTube, but in kind of stumbling across those videos, and kind of really starting to, as I begin to navigate, or begin to navigate my way towards being a speaker, it was a no-brainer to figure out, okay, what does his story look like? What were his experiences? How did he get started? Um, and in doing that, I found out that there was that that Eric Thomas and his team, um, CJ, and Carl, initially, they had a podcast called the Secrets to Success podcast. And like, I literally went back to episode 1, which is probably 7 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And from episode 1 to current day at the time, this was about 2 years ago, I listened to every single episode and like really started to pick through like, okay, what did they do? What did it look like? What were their challenges? And like from afar, like they were mentors to me early on, and even present day, I still follow the podcast, and I'm still um, picking up tips and clues that they've shared on the podcast. But outside of that, um, I joined a network called the Black Speakers Network, and was able to get a lot of insight there. But after joining the group, I actually ran into a guy um, that was a part of the group, and a part of the group as well, named Mills Rogers, and he has been instrumental in kind of helping me understand um, the process of being the business of being a speaker. There's one thing to be able to speak, to be able to stand in front of a crowd to speak, but if you're not getting booked, like there are no crowds. So he definitely helped me kind of understand the business of speaking and what it looks like to get booked in the education industry.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let's see. Ah, how would you say, and you kind of alluded to this during your vocational story, but how did your childhood passions as a kid prepare you for your adult career choice?
Um, so my passions as a kid was primarily sports. I played football, played basketball, and had the experience, fortunate experience of um, growing up in a school district where Lamarck ISD, Lamarck High School, was a high school that I attended. One of the great football programs in the state of Texas, from the early 90s or even late 80s to the early 2000s. 10 state championship appearances, 5
Wow.
state titles. So football was definitely king, and being in Texas, the Friday night lights is where the party is at, so to speak. So growing up in Lamarck, like there was this priority placed on football, this superiority placed on football above all other sports. And growing up as a kid, seeing that, like instead of most kids wanted to be an NFL player, growing up in Lamarck, like you wanted to be a Lamarck Cougar, you wanted to be able to be under the Friday night lights, you wanted to be able to say that you were a Cougar. So growing up, I definitely wanted to do that. But as I got into high school and I saw the process up close, um, every every year before or after Christmas break, because expectation in Lamarck is, or was, not so much anymore. But me growing up, me going through high school, the expectation in Lamarck is not a district championship, is not to beat the local rival. It is to win a state championship, and anything short of that is a failed season.
Wow.
And so growing up, I I saw like I saw the dominance of the program, but as I got into high school, I saw what that process looked like. I saw summertime. I saw what was required, and people putting in work in the weight room, and working out beyond what was expected, beyond like the school day and practice. And so every December or every January after Christmas break, in Lamarck, there's this thing called boot camp. And my first experience with boot camp was as a ninth grader, if I'm not mistaken. And boot camp was this. So we had during our school day, we had an athletic period. It was in the middle of the day, right before lunch, and um, in January after Christmas break, we did, and during the athletic period, we did boot camp. And boot camp was like this prior to starting spring practice. Boot camp was kind of the introduction to the spring, so to speak, and it was a nightmare, like in terms of just like the sheer physical demands of it. It was maybe 35 to 40 minutes, and like after boot camp, like you literally felt like I can't do anything else today. Like I would go to my lunch period and not want to eat because I would be so tired. But
Mm.
later on, I was able to make the connection and understand that like other people are not doing this. What we're doing right now, and not only boot camp, but outside of boot camp, even like practice and just kind of the level of workouts and the level of commitment required to be a Lamar Cougar. At the time, it was all about football, but in hindsight, I look back and I understood from that process that winning happens in the off season. And those state championships were a result not of just superior talent. There was superior talent. There were some very good athletes, great athletes. But beyond the athletic ability, there was this commitment to the off season and getting better and improving in the off season, where other people may have been taking the off season off and deciding that like now is my break time and I'll play when the season comes around. Well, champions, no matter what sport, like they always have a superior off season. And I would say my childhood passion is was sports, and the connection that I was able to make from that was just again that winning happens in the off season. And you want if you want to have a championship season, like you have to have a championship type off season. And I think that translates, like if you want to have a championship life, like you have to put in the work before you get to the place that you're trying to arrive at. And for me as a speaker, like I I understood that I don't know exactly what it takes. Initially, I don't know exactly what it takes to get booked. I don't know what it takes to be successful in this industry. But I think though that experience growing up and boot camp and all that off season work, I understood that in order to be successful, like I have to put in the work. And from reading books to talking to people to getting connected with networks and organizations that are already doing what I desire to do. I would say that's definitely a way that my passions growing up, my connection with sports and particularly football and Lamar help shape the way that I approach my profession or my industry.
That's awesome. And just to piggyback off of that, like you talked about a lot of different things, but what I heard is the culture, right? And so kind of growing up in that culture where this was the expectation. And I think a lot of what anybody who's working with young people is how do we change the perception? How do we change the that culture of like what is the expectation level? And I went to a high school where we had a lot of great athletes, but we haven't won a state championship since like the '70s, and part of that is as a good culture. And so it's a longer discussion, but I
Yeah,
got a lot from that. I got a lot from
yeah.
that. So you talked about okay, this is the one. This is sometimes I guess this is probably not say the hardest question, but it's tough to kind of contain everything that you do in something brief, a little summary. And so we ask each guest, can you explain what you do as a professional in one sentence, and then explain what you do as a professional in one word?
All right. So one sentence. I help to empower young people to overcome obstacles, take ownership of their success, and begin to walk in the fullness of their potential. One word, I empower.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. What would you say you love the most about your job?
So for me, it's helping students make the connection between their mindset, how they view themselves, their potential in spite of their situation, and helping them make the connection to see that, like, in spite of where you come from, in spite of what you've been through, in spite of what you're going through, like success is possible, like being greater than your environment and exceeding expectations and the limitations, like it's possible. So I think for me, like the greatest joy is like helping is seeing students make that connection and beginning to walk in their potential.
So on the other end of the spectrum, we talked about what you love. What would you say is the biggest challenge to your work?
So the biggest challenge is, I think early on, I thought, hey, I speak, and I think you kind of make the assumption that I speak, somehow people are gonna find me. Like, I don't know, like something mysterious is gonna happen. People are gonna find me. Well, that's not the case at all. Like, you have to be first and foremost a salesperson. You're a salesperson that speaks. And I think the biggest challenge was for me making that, understanding that, and then figuring out how to navigate it. How do I navigate sales? Because that's not my strong suit. How do I navigate sales and understand marketing? So that would definitely be one of the biggest challenges.
Absolutely. And this is just for the listener. I mean, that is one of the reasons why Versus Cultivate is structured the way it is it's an intentionality. We do storytelling, we do a lot of different things. But it's sharing that there is a way in which through our relationship building, even when we do it a podcast, we're trying to organically build new relationships over and over and over and over again. And so exactly what you're saying. And I think that there is a tension. I mean, you said a lot, but there's a tension, I think, in our community of like, well, can we build? Can we sell? Can we this, that, and third? I'm like, sales happens every day. When you think about some of the, you go get some breakfast, when you go to the mall, like it's always happening all around you. And so, how do we, Grace the Cultivators, how do we help the next generation see from a nonprofit and a for-profit standpoint, how can we build? So absolutely, and I appreciate that interaction. What would you say are steps that you have found that you need to either become respected or certified in what you do?
So I would say number one is stamina. Like, most people check out, especially when you figure out like nobody's looking for you, nobody knows you. I don't care how great of a speaker you are, like they don't know you, they're not checking for you, they're not looking for you. Like, you have to place yourself in a position to be seen, to be to be acknowledged by decision makers in the education space or whatever space you're trying to speak in. So the
Mm-hmm.
first step is like developing stamina, because like it's not going to happen right away.
Yep.
It's going to take time. It's going to take um, different marketing channels, and over time, like you get noticed. But before most people get to that point, they leave and say, you know what, this isn't working. It's not working because you haven't stuck with it long enough. So I would say first and foremost, stamina. Um, Number two, I would say um, having a passion and um, having a desire to serve, to really serve people, in whatever space you're in. Like, if you're doing, um, if you're doing speaking, and I'll take my example, like if you're speaking to students because like um, your sole purpose is to get paid, sooner or later, like you're gonna check out. You're gonna abandon it because there's no passion and there's no desire to really serve people.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's just another thing that, okay, when I feel like I've done this enough, I've exhausted my interest in this area, like I'll just leave unless you have a true passion. Like, for me, like I would speak to students if I didn't get paid a penny. So I think like there has to be like this passion and desire for it, for the thing that you're doing. And three, uh, um, I would say networking. Like, you need to network and get mentoring. You need to be connected to people that are more advanced than you in the space, and being willing to learn from those people.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'll just say ditto. Ditto to all those things. Awesome. Um, how does a person, and you don't have to, of course, get into the numbers, things like that, but when you talk about the value for your services um, in specific speaking engagements, what does that look like? Can you give us just kind of a general overview of what you're looking at when you're talking about the negotiation of salary, the value of your services, what you provide to those people you're speaking?
So I think it took me a long time to really understand that piece, because coming from a background where like you go get a job, and you work 8 hours a day, and at the end of the 2 week pay period, you get paid a paycheck, or if you get paid monthly, you get paid monthly. Um, I was unable to understand that like I'm not getting paid per hour as a speaker. Um, I remember my first paid engagement. The director of the program said, "My budget is $250," and I was like, "Yes, $250." I'm only speaking for an hour, and I'm getting $250. I thought, man, I thought that I was actually doing something. And then just in realizing, or not just realizing, but actually again doing the research um, and getting mentoring from people that are already in the space, like
Hmm.
you're getting to you as a speaker. I'm not getting paid for my time. I'm getting
Hmm.
paid for my expertise, and I'm
Hmm.
getting paid for the value that I add to students. So
Absolutely.
I would say, as a speaker, someone that's speaking to in any space, um, from a empowerment perspective, helping people move from one place to another in terms of their mindset, in terms of their personal development. Like I don't even think you can put like a cap on that. So I think understanding that like I'm not getting paid for my time, but I'm getting paid for the value that I'm adding to students. I would say that any fee that I present to the decision maker, I mean, I think within reason, I would say is a bargain, because like if I'm speaking to a student, not that I'm anything special, not that I'm like there's something phenomenal about me, but if I can help a student change their mindset, if I can help them move to a place where they understand that like there's no limitations on my life, I can be exactly who God created me to be. I can live out my purpose. I can impact the world. I can add value to other people, and I can personally benefit from that. I don't think there's a way to cap that. So again, I think any any fee, any rate that is put out there is a bargain, because again, like there's when a kid understands that there's no limitations on my life, and I think that allows me to go in and feel comfortable with the number that I present, because I know that I take my craft seriously. I believe in what I have to offer, and I believe in the value that I'm going to add to your students. And and I think that's what allowed me to gain confidence in terms of setting a number. Because at first it was like, how can I tell this person that like this is how much I charge, when I used to like I used to only make this amount in a month at my job. So how can I
Hmm.
now ask for that for speaking for an hour? But when I was able to make the connection to like I'm adding value to students, and I'm helping them overcome any self-limiting beliefs and obstacles that they may have in terms of their mindset, I was able to move past those um, hesitations that I had initially.
Understood. Understood. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Based on what you know, so this is our time machine question, like the time machine question. Based on what you know now about your vocation, what advice would you give yourself if you can go back on the first day of the job?
Um, I think the first thing that I would say to my former self, first getting started, dude, you should have started earlier. Like you should
Mm,
have been doing this like fresh out of college, or even like during college.
yeah.
Um, just I would definitely be advising my younger self to take himself seriously,
Hmm.
and really understand that like that you have the potential to like add like extreme value for the audience or for the demographic that you're seeking to reach.
Mhm. I'll start earlier. Um, all right. So, how would you say you prepared a one-day transition from this role? Like, what does in-game look like for you? What is retirement? What is that succession plan or transition plan? What does that look like for you?
Um, so I definitely plan to speak as long as I can to some degree, but I do see like in the future, I don't know how far in the future, but eventually, maybe not speaking as much and really beginning to train up to help train up a younger generation of speakers, and even like a few years down the road, maybe starting to take on some coaching, because the reality is like if I were to there's I believe something like 100 and over 100,000 like K through 12 schools in the US. If I was able to reach 10% of those, which would be nearly impossible, that's 10,000 schools.
Hmm.
1%, 1,000 schools, which is a really difficult task.
Sure.
Um, so there's a lot of impact that's needed. There's a lot of there's a lot needed in terms of reaching young people, and there's far too much for one person, two people, or even 100 people to be able to do. So I think there has to be um, people that are passionate about working with young people, empowering young people. um, but while there are a lot of people that are passionate about helping young people, but what's missing for a lot of people is a know-how. So I want to be able to, down the road, help connect people with the know-how, help connect that passion with the know-how of how to get into the education space and how to get paid for their passion. So coaching is definitely one, um, and outside of that, more so of a consulting role for educators.
This is our Cultivate Countdown. This is the one we put on different memes, put it around the internet, that sort of thing. If you had to give, we call it a Cultivate Countdown. Of course, you can't summarize everything, into 3 steps, 5 steps, that sort of thing. What would you say are the general principles that you would say this is connected to Darnell Caldwell? These are kind of tried and true. I come back to these each time. What would you say is your Cultivate Countdown?
Um, so I would say, um, first and foremost, like believing in, believing in who God created you to be, and being confident and comfortable in walking in your purpose.
If you had to have one motivational quote, we also put this on the meme as well. What is your motivational quote that's unique to you? Basically, trying to a Caldwellism, if you will. What would you say is your motivational quote?
Yeah. So success is within the grasp of every young person that is bold enough to reach for it. And
Awesome.
that's something that I wholeheartedly believe, regardless of circumstance, situation. I believe that success, the realization of success, the maximization of their gifts, their talents, and their abilities for the accomplishment of their goals is in the grasp, within reach of every young person that's bold enough to take that step and believe in, again, who God created them to be, and being confident and comfortable enough to walk out their purpose.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, Darnell, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to give us this wisdom, this insight. Where can we find you? Where are the different channels that we can connect to what you're doing and hopefully connect the dots?
So website is darnellspeaks.com. I'm on social media at Darnell Speaks, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I'm trying to figure it out. Darnell Speaks on TikTok there. But yeah, so at Darnell Speaks, most channels, and www.darnellspeaks.com.
Well, thank you so much, Darnell. Really appreciate your time and everything. Have a great night.
You do the same. Thank you.